Most people choose a partner the way they choose a meal at a restaurant they've never been to. By the picture, by the description, by how it makes them feel in the first 5 minutes. And then they're surprised, genuinely, repeatedly surprised, when the meal does not sustain them for the next 20 years. This is not bad luck. This is the predictable result of choosing with the wrong organ. Friedrich Nietzsche, a man who never married, who studied love and partnership with the cold precision of someone who refused to be sentimental about anything, left behind one of the most uncomfortable, unromantic, and ultimately useful frameworks for choosing a partner that has ever been written. He did not believe in love at first sight. He did not believe that chemistry was a reliable signal. He did not believe that the feeling of being swept away was something to trust. He believed something far less exciting and far more durable, that the right partner is not found. They are recognized through a specific, demanding, almost scientific process of evaluation that most people are too impatient or too romantic to actually perform. Today we go through that process. Old world, unsentimental, brutal where it needs to be. Stay until the end, because the final test is the one that determines whether everything is before it actually matters. 1. Stop asking how they make you feel. Start asking who they become under pressure. This is the first and most important correction. Modern partner selection is almost entirely organized around feeling. Do they make me feel good? Do they make me feel seen? Do they make me feel excited, comfortable, desired? Nietzsche would consider this question almost useless, because feeling, in the early stage of any relationship, tells you almost nothing about the actual person. It tells you about chemistry, about novelty, about the specific cocktail of hormones produced by uncertainty and attraction. It does not tell you who they are. Nietzsche believed character reveals itself only under strain, not in the easy moments, the dinners, the trips, the early months when both people are presenting their best version. In the moments when something goes wrong, how do they behave when they are tired? When they don't get what they want? When they are embarrassed or wrong or caught in a mistake? Do they take responsibility, or do they immediately look for someone else to blame? Do they stay present in conflict, or do they withdraw, punish with silence, weaponize distance? Do they tell you the truth when the truth is unflattering to them? Or do they manage your perception of them even at the cost of honesty? You cannot know the answers to these questions in the early, easy phase. You can only know them by watching, patiently, deliberately. What happens when ease is removed? The old world instinct, before modern dating compressed everything into weeks, was to take time, not out of caution for caution's sake. Because character requires time to reveal itself, and the person who skips this step is choosing blind. Do not choose someone you need to complete you. Choose someone who is already complete. This is perhaps Nietzsche's most countercultural relationship principle, and the one most at odds with how romance is typically portrayed. The popular story of love is the story of two halves becoming whole, of finding the person who completes you, who fills what is missing, who makes you feel whole in a way you couldn't achieve alone. Nietzsche considered this not romantic, but dangerous, because a person who needs another person to feel whole is not choosing from strength, they are choosing from absence. And a relationship built to fill an absence will always carry the weight of that absence. Even after the relationship begins, the person who enters a partnership already whole, already engaged in their own becoming, already capable of standing fully on their own, chooses a partner for a completely different reason. Not to fill a gap, to share a life with someone whose presence adds to an already full existence. This distinction changes everything about how the relationship functions. Two complete people choosing each other create something that can withstand difficulty, because neither person's survival, identity, or sense of worth depends on the other staying. Two incomplete people clinging to each other to feel whole create something fragile, because the trauma one person changes, grows, or simply has a bad week. The entire structure that depended on them filling a role becomes unstable. Nietzsche's instruction, blunt as always, do not look for someone to complete you. Become complete. Then look for someone equally complete to build something with. 3. Watch how they treat people who can do nothing for them. This is one of the oldest and most reliable character tests, long predating Nietzsche, but one he understood with total clarity. Anyone can be charming to someone they want something from. The interview behaves well. The first date behaves well. The person trying to impress you behaves, almost universally, well. This tells you nothing. What tells you everything is how they treat the person who has no power over their outcome, the waiter, the assistant, the stranger who made a mistake, the person who cannot advance their career, fund their lifestyle, or validate their ego in any way. Nietzsche believed the true measure of a person's character is revealed not in how they treat their equals or superiors, but in how they treat those they believe they can disregard without consequence. Because this, The behavior with no audience, no incentive, no performance required, is the behavior closest to who they actually are. If you watch closely, patiently, without announcing that you are watching, you will learn more about a potential partner's true character from one interaction with a stranger, from 100 conversations directed at you. You are always, in some sense, the audience for whom they are performing their best self. The stranger is not. Watch what happens when the performance has no audience. 4. Do not choose comfort. Choose someone who challenges you toward your own becoming. This will be uncomfortable for some people to hear, because the modern instinct, especially after difficult relationships, is to seek the opposite of difficulty: ease, peace. A partner who makes everything simple, comfortable, undemanding. Nietzsche would consider this a profound misunderstanding of what partnership is for. He did not believe partnership exists to provide comfort. He believed it exists, at its highest expression, to provide mutual elevation. The right partner in his framework is not the person who agrees with everything you do. It is the person who, through their own standards, their own growth, their own refusal to accept less than your full potential, makes you want to become more than you currently are. This is uncomfortable by design, because growth is always uncomfortable. The wrong partner makes your current self feel safe. The right partner makes your future self feel inevitable. There is a profound difference between a relationship that asks nothing of you and a relationship that asks everything worth asking. The first feels easier in the short term. The second produces a life and a person that the first could never have built. 5. Notice what they do when they are wrong. This single behavior, more than almost any other, predicts the long-term health of a partnership. Because everyone, eventually, will be wrong. Will make a mistake, will hurt the other person, unintentionally or otherwise. The question is never whether this will happen. The question is what happens immediately after. Some people, when confronted with their own mistake, immediately defend. They explain, justify, redirect blame, minimize the impact, make the conversation about how unfair it is to be criticized, rather than about the actual harm done. This is not a personality quirk. It is a structural problem that will recur for the rest of the relationship, in increasingly important situations, with increasingly significant consequences. Other people, when confronted with their own mistake, become defensive in the opposite direction, collapsing into excessive guilt, self-punishment, an inability to simply acknowledge the error and move forward without turning it into a referendum on their entire worth. This is also a structural problem, one that will eventually exhaust the partner who has to manage it. What you are looking for, and what is rarer than either of these patterns, is someone who can hear that they were wrong, feel the appropriate discomfort of that, take responsibility cleanly, and move forward without drama in either direction. This capacity, clean accountability without either defensiveness or collapse, is one of the strongest predictors of whether two people can actually build a life together. Because every long relationship is, in some sense, a long series of being wrong and being forgiven, in both directions, repeatedly, for decades. Choose someone who can do this well. Everything else is secondary to this. 6. Pay attention to what they want when nobody is watching. This is one of the oldest tests in human courtship, practiced long before psychology had language for it. What does this person do with unstructured time? With money nobody is checking? With freedom nobody is monitoring? Not what do they say they value. What do their actual choices, made in private, reveal about what they actually value? Nietzsche placed enormous weight on this distinction between stated values and lived values. Anyone can articulate good values in conversation. Far fewer people actually organize their private life, the part with no audience, around those values. The person who claims to value growth but spends every unstructured hour avoiding anything difficult. The person who claims to value honesty but is quietly dishonest in small, unwitnessed ways. The person who claims to value partnership but disappears into themselves the moment no one requires their presence. You will learn the truth not from what someone tells you they are. You will learn it from what they choose to do when the choosing carries no consequence and no audience. This is harder to observe than conversation. It requires time, patience, and a willingness to watch rather than simply listen. But it is, in Nietzsche's framework, far more reliable. 7. Do not mistake intensity for depth. This distinction has destroyed more relationships, and more lives, than almost any other confusion in human history. Intensity feels like depth. The drama, the highs and lows, the all-consuming nature of a connection that burns through everything in its path. This feels, in the moment, like proof of something profound. Nietzsche would tell you the opposite is often true. Intensity is frequently the symptom of instability, not depth. Two unstable systems colliding produce enormous energy. This energy is intoxicating. It is also, almost always, unsustainable. Depth feels different, quieter, less dramatic. It is the steady accumulation of trust over time, the specific comfort of being genuinely known rather than constantly excited. It does not produce the same chemical rush as intensity, which is precisely why most people, conditioned to mistake excitement for value, walk past it. The relationship that lasts decades is rarely the one that began as the most intense. It is usually the one that began with the quieter, less dramatic, more durable recognition. This is someone I could build a real life with. Learn to value that recognition over the more exciting, less reliable signal of intensity. The intensity fades. The depth, if it is real, does not. 8. Test whether they can be alone before you decide whether to be with them. This sounds counterintuitive. It is one of Nietzsche's most important insights. A person who cannot tolerate their own solitude, who must constantly be in motion, in company, in distraction, will eventually use you as that distraction. Not maliciously, structurally. Because if they have not built the internal capacity to be alone with themselves, to sit with their own thoughts, their own boredom, their own discomfort without needing someone else to manage it for them, they will need you to provide a constant stream of stimulation, attention, and management. This is exhausting in ways that are not immediately visible. It feels like devotion at first, like being wanted intensely. Over time, it reveals itself as dependency. And dependency, eventually, curdles into resentment when the other person cannot keep providing enough. The person who can be genuinely, comfortably alone, who has their own inner resources, their own capacity for solitude, their own life that does not collapse the moment you are not present, is the person who can actually choose you, rather than simply needing you. And choice, repeated daily over decades, is a far more durable foundation than need. 9. The final test, and the one that determines everything. Here is the question Nietzsche would have you ask before any other. Not, do they make me happy? Not, am I in love? Not, does this feel right? But this, if I become my fullest, most complete self, the version of me I am genuinely working toward, does this person grow alongside that version? Or does this person require me to stay smaller than I am capable of becoming? This is the test that reveals everything. Some partners, even loving ones, even well-intentioned ones, are only compatible with a certain version of you. The version that exists today. The version with today's limitations, today's fears, today's smaller scope. And as you grow, as you genuinely, inevitably change through the process of becoming more fully yourself, these partnerships begin to strain. Not because anyone did anything wrong, because the partnership was built for a person who no longer exists. Other partners, rarer, harder to find, but worth the search, are compatible not with a static version of you, but with your trajectory. They do not need you to stay the same to remain comfortable in the relationship. They are curious about who you are becoming, engaged by your growth rather than threatened by it, capable of growing alongside you, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but always in the same fundamental direction. This is the partner Nietzsche would tell you to look for, not the one who fits who you are today, the one who can walk beside the person you are becoming, and is becoming something equally real alongside you. Find that, and you will have found something that outlasts chemistry, outlasts ease, outlasts every shallow signal the modern world tells you to prioritize. You will have found a partnership built the old way, the way that actually lasts,